Way back in the summer of 2020, I was given the opportunity to do something that I had never thought I'd do before, and that was own a Miata. I never really saw myself in one, and to be honest, when I first heard of Miatas when I was a teenager, my idea of the perfect Japanese car was that it had to have at least 400 horsepower and an engine inside that ended with a JZ. But my friend gave me this opportunity to buy his car for a nice price, and I couldn't refuse. I very quickly fell in love with the car. It's such a blast to drive, and everything they said about Miatas was true. I mean, how could you complain driving in the summer with a top down and a Miata? Everyone gave you looks, and some of them were good, some of them were bad, but I enjoyed it either way. But not too long after, when fall came around, the 1.6 liter 4-cylinder engine turned into a 3-cylinder engine. And that's not ideal, because all 4 cylinders is what the car needs to go. Going down from 100 horsepower really doesn't get you going anywhere. The engine had over 200,000 miles on it, the suspension was getting kind of worn, the brakes needed to be replaced, the tires were bad, and the paint was starting to get a bit faded even after I buffed it. So I decided this was the time for a soft rebuild, and we're starting with the brakes. So when I was looking through parts, I was kind of deciding what type of pads, rotors to go with, and I ended up going OEM because I want this car to be a daily driver, and I'm not trying to turn this into a crazy project like the Nissan or like what I did with the Supra. I've had those before in the past, and they're great, they're fantastic, but they are a slight inconvenience to drive normally. I'm sure you all will understand that. So I want to keep this as something I could drive daily, kind of upgrade it a little bit with the suspension, and really have the end goal where it's a car that isn't an inconvenience to drive at all. And so with the brakes, since they're warped a bit, just replacing them with the OEM will be just fine for the way we're at, because we're not going to be going with crazy power numbers anyway. Although I'm not going for a build that has crazy powers, I did want a good power increase, so I decided I needed to paint the calipers red because horsepower gains are imperative when you're doing a build on a car, and there's no more proven method to get horsepower quicker and cheaper than painting the calipers red. Although I'm going with original rotors and pads, I did want to go with stainless steel lines because the feel is just so much better than the original rubber lines. You wouldn't really think that changing lines is such a huge difference, but if you've ever had stainless steel lines on your car before, you would know that it makes such a huge difference. The thing about stainless steel lines that makes them so good is that they don't expand when you hit the brakes. So the reason a lot of your brakes will be squishy when you're pressing them is because they have rubber lines. And with the stainless steel lines, you're getting a much stiffer and a lot more immediate brake feel, which is exactly what I'm looking for in this car. I want to enjoy the handling, as I mentioned before, and the stainless steel lines giving it such a quick response to braking, that's exactly what I'm looking for when I'm going for late drives along the nice turny roads. What I'm doing here is something that I highly recommend to any of you who are replacing your brakes by yourself. A lot of your brake rotors aren't going to come coated on the center hats or along the rim on the outside, so all I'm doing here is I'm painting them. This is not for looks by any means, it's because what happens is these actually will rust super quickly, and so it just looks really bad if you get a fresh set of brakes and 2,000 miles in they're already coated in rust on the hats and on the rims. It just looks really bad, and to be honest, it's kind of frustrating and a little bit of a bummer when our brand new part looks like it's been on the car for 20 years. So I'm putting some paint on to cover that to keep that from happening.
Rage on that beat, going crazy.
All I used to get the rust off of the rear calipers was wire brush. Most of the rust on the back is surface rust, so don't let that scare you away if that's the issue. although we did run into some issues later on with the brake calipers that you'll see pretty soon. There are two things certain in life: death, and that no time that you work on a car will it ever go perfectly smoothly. And this all hit right here. First off, I realized that I put the wrong rotors on. Now they're the right rotors for the Miata, but the front and rear rotors are the same size. The fronts are vented, the rears are not. I didn't realize that, so I put the rears in the front, so I needed to swap those. Secondly, the rear calipers were seized, so I ended up having to order new ones, which took a week and a half to get here, but they came and we go ahead and went and put them on. But yeah, that's just working on cars. So we persevered and it turned out really well in the end, but there is no such thing as a smooth time working on cars. Last thing to do on a Miata for the brake job was to flush the remaining brake fluid into the lines and to fill it up with .3 brake fluid. Get it all nice and fresh, that way the lines and the brakes that we put in have new fresh stopping power.